Hey there, Internet. My name is Jack Packard, and this is The Way.
I'm Darren Mooney. I do not have a catchphrase.
I'm KC Wosu, and the sky is falling.
This week on A Marvelous Escape, we are going to be talking about episode 4 of WandaVision. We interrupt this broadcast. How exciting! Hello and welcome. This is A Marvelous Escape. And I have spoken. So, KC's prediction was 100% correct. We went outside the bubble this week. We got, I'm going to say my prediction was partially correct because it was definitely them watching the show outside of the bubble, which was very fun. We got introduced to FBI agent Wu, and Darcy showed up. All of our peripheral world building characters. Agent Wu shows up with the close-up magic card trick.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what? That was adorable.
I thought that was really cute.
Yeah.
And of course, for anyone who doesn't look through IMDb, we finally now have confirmation on who Geraldine really is in Monica Rambeau. And everything is now, the loop is now finished. We know everything, all the pieces are set yet again. I'll get into that later. But first of all, what's some opening impressions of the episode?
I quite liked it, actually. I really, really liked it. It feels very clever, very fun, very inventive. And again, we talked in the first episode, one of the things that I like about WandaVision is that it is not just a Marvel movie on a weekly scale, or a Marvel movie split across, 8 equal parts and then aired in 8 parts. I like that it's actually using the format of television. And I mean, we could argue, as infuriated as people are by the kind of like Lost style mystery box plotting, that's something that's designed to appeal to a television audience where you get it week on week. But also even little things where this can spend 30 minutes with 2 supporting characters from 2 of the, let's be frank, minor franchises in the Marvel universe. And do that, and actually like not have people in capes show up or do kind of cool ass stuff, and just be like, yeah, we're gonna hang out with Randall Parks from Fresh Off the Boat, we're gonna hang out with Kat Dennings from Two Broke Girls, and these 2 sitcom stars are gonna sit down and they're gonna watch sitcoms. And it's going to be great. There's going to be so much meta stuff happening. And I really like this. And I really like this not because I'm particularly fond of mystery box plotting. I think mystery box plotting can work or it cannot work depending on how good you are at it. Some people are better at it than others. And to be honest, there have been enough cases where you've been like, I don't really feel like that was satisfying, that maybe you should be a bit skeptical of that. I really liked it because it's basically a gigantic ode to fandom. Like, the entire point of the episode that we just watched is about how fans are watching WandaVision. It's quite literally about sitting down, watching your favorite show, talking about what it means, trying to discern what the hell is going on, to the point where they literally take screen caps of the actors and go, yeah, but you see, these characters are played by these 2 actors. That's who these people are. You have at one point like Jimmy Woo writing on the board, why is it hexagonal? Is this happening in real time?
I kind of really love that part, because I'm like, they're doing exactly what all of us are doing. Like, it's like one of those questions was literally one of the same questions, like, who's doing this? Like, it's the same stuff we were asking as people watching the show. It's like, they're us.
Yeah, and I love that. It's very much like an ode to participatory fan culture. Like, and again, like, we give fandom a lot of crap on occasion, and perhaps deservedly so, because in some cases fandom cannot be a very welcoming, very open-minded space. But I think that, like, fandom at its purest is very similar to what you're seeing in this show right now, which is, let's sit down and have snacks and watch this together and have conversations that turn out to be deeper than we intend them to be about this media that we're consuming. And I really love that aspect of it. I think that it was nice to have that kind of celebration there. I agree with, I suspect I agree with what Jack's going to say, or I agree with what I suspect Jack is going to say, which is the argument that we don't necessarily find out that much more this week than we knew last week. In fact, it's very cleverly structured so that we don't, but I like that wasn't the point. I like that explaining what was happening was not necessarily the point of it. It's more like, no. This is television. This is how you watch television. This is how you are a fan of this thing. This is participatory culture. And we are, as writers and producers and directors, aware of that. so we're going to build it into the narrative that we're telling you. And it's like, okay, yes, this is a little self-aware, but it was only 30 minutes long, and look, you're going to get Falcon and the Winter Soldier in a couple of weeks anyway, so you'll have your generic Marvel stuff. So you could just let me enjoy this. That's my thoughts.
KC, any intro thoughts here?
So yeah, early on, I wanted to say, before the show actually got started proper, during the recap, they reminded you of when Wanda and Monica Rambeau actually met for the first time, right? And remember, we were wondering, Jack and I were going back and forth on whether Geraldine actually knew and was pretending to be undercover, or whether her mind was wiped. And I'm still a little nebulous on which of those two things is true. But I honestly feel like there must be some level of mind wiping, because in that interaction when they reshowed it, she asks her, "Who are you?" She doesn't know what to say, and then it kind of clicks. Geraldine. Yeah. So that name stuck out to me. I went and looked it up. Apparently, Geraldine is a fictional African-American character and the most famous recurring persona on the Flip Wilson show, which is a 1970s variety show. So that must have come from Wanda's interpretation of Black people in that era. Yes. Oh, right?
How fun. Yeah.
So you would assume that means whoever enters that bubble, Wanda takes control of and like gives them parts and gives them roles in her TV show.
Yes.
But towards the end, I'm not sure exactly what happened there. Like, she was starting to break through. She said some stuff. Maybe she was acting undercover at that point. I don't know. It's still a little nebulous.
What I'm thinking here is that you were correct once again, that because of the nature, we learn how Monica Rambeau gets literally sucked into the bubble. She did not go in there. Going into the bubble was not her mission. She got sucked into the bubble. Mm-hmm. And so I think you were correct that she was mind wiped, but perhaps because of her training, she was breaking out of it. And even the subconscious shield necklace, which we have to assume...
Or sword, yeah.
The subconscious sword necklace, which we have to assume is just basically like Monica's mind saying, remember who you are. Because obviously Wanda wouldn't give her that.
Or would she? Because remember, we saw the beekeeper guy, right? He was wearing basically a hazmat suit, but once he entered that bubble, it didn't seem like Wanda necessarily was aware of it. It's just whatever field she put up is kind of transforming anything into what it should be based on the time period, and he still had the sword logo on his back.
So would the shield necklace be akin? She was wearing like her shield. She was wearing her sword like badge, like her identification.
And then so it turned it into like a little pendant thing.
Yeah. Same way the helicopter turns into a little kind of
It still had the insignia on it, but it was like, this thing shouldn't exist during this time period, so let's turn it into a toy helicopter.
Yeah, even though it's red, I kind of like that. I like the kind of like haziness of it. Again, I like that it's not very specific or very logical or very rational. It's just like we fixed it a little bit, so it's going to look like a toy helicopter, but it's still going to be red. He's going to come out in the sewer. He's not going to be in a sword uniform, but he's going to be a beekeeper in the sewer for some reason. And he's still going to have the sword logo. Or she's going to have a medallion, and that medallion's going to have the logo of a secret government task force on it. Because
it's an interesting bit of magical logistics because, the beekeeper, the guy who's in the hazmat suit that gets transformed into a beekeeper, they pull out the rope that detaches, and it's still a jump rope when they pull it out. So once something is transformed, we have to assume then that it stays transformed. Yeah. That's why she kept
she's wearing the clothes.
Outfit. Yeah. Very, very interesting, fun stuff. The episode was a lot of fun, is I guess what I'm going to say. From a narrative perspective, I feel like last week was the show reconfirming and solidifying the fact that Wanda is in control and Wanda's doing this. And this week, the show reconfirmed and re-solidified that it's Wanda the one's doing this. And like they literally like backed us up so that all the characters could learn what we learned like 2 episodes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's frustrating for me. What I think what we have here is the premise of the bit running in direct contrast to the way the story now needs to unfold. And one of the most beautiful parts of streaming television is that episodes don't have to be the same length. You can have, it can be 22 minutes, it can be 38 minutes, it can be 40 minutes, 15, whatever you want it to be, right? But they're locked into this bit that this is a half-hour show when really this should have been an hour-long episode mushed together with episode 3 of them jumping back and forth so we all could have learned everything at the same time, and now they're retreading, and it's making me upset.
I like the structural conceit of it being, like, again, an episode of television. It not being a bit of material mushed together and kind of served up, like, kind of deli counter style. It's like, what's this meat? It's like, oh, don't worry, that's from the meta-narrative. Don't let that get in the way of, like, the sitcom stuff you're enjoying. Again, one of the things I actually like about it is the commitment to the form. And the commitment to the form includes, well, we're breaking out, and that's going to be its own episode. And yes, that episode, again, is literally running in parallel to the point where the end of episode 3 is the end of episode 4. You have gained no literal ground over those 2 episodes. And I understand that being an issue, but part of me is like, look, it's going to run for another 5 weeks. I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to stop watching it. I'm enjoying it. I don't feel any particular urge to race towards where it's going. I don't feel like my time being spent with it is being wasted. I actually quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed the little bits sort of Darcy and kind of Jimmy sitting down and sharing treats as they're eating it. Or Darcy kind of meditating on how often, the fact that Darcy notices that they shift time period every episode, and asking the question, which is why do they do that? It can't just be to keep me, the viewer, interested. Surely there has to be a deeper meaning that we have to figure out. Isn't that right, audience? I like that sort of playfulness. That's enough. I'm on board for a half hour of that. I don't share the same kind of frustration with pacing, to be fair.
Honestly, I'm kind of both. I'm kind of in both camps here, because while I agree with Jack that to me, it does feel like it took too long to get here. And once they got there, they were basically just confirming everything that we already knew. I kind of also feel like, well, maybe we're the ones who we're thinking about it a little too much.
Yeah.
So the average viewer maybe wouldn't have known all these things. And this was basically just to catch them up and have them actually be able to understand what came before, which isn't a bad thing. And, and like Darren said, it was a fun episode to watch them basically ask all those same questions that we were doing. That was really kind of illuminating.
They pause and rewind, which I love. They freeze frame it.
Yeah, which is stuff that we've probably literally done in trying to analyze this show, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're doing exactly what we do, and that's funny to just have that mirror held up to your face to kind of poke fun at you. I love stuff like that. But just like Jack is saying, we didn't move the plot forward. So this episode was literally just kind of a catch-up one. Which makes it so hard to kind of predict, I guess, what's going to happen next, because I really feel like we didn't get any new information. We got confirmation of everything that we thought was already going on.
Yeah. What it reminds me of is, for anyone who was a fan of the show Lost, and Darren had mentioned kind of mystery box television before, Lost's ending, the final episodes of Lost, is very controversial. And I happen to be a big fan of Lost, and I happen to be in the minority of people who enjoyed the ending of Lost because, and this is a small sidetrack, but I swear I'll bring it back around to WandaVision. To me, the ending of Lost was good because it focused on the characters and not necessarily the checklist of all of the items wrapping up each individual mystery. Whereas this episode felt like that's what they were doing. They were checking boxes. Oh, you wondered how this happened? This is how that happened. You wondered how the helicopter got on there? That's how that happened. The beekeeper? He's the beekeeper. What's this? This is that. And while it was fun, and I enjoy all of those actors, it felt like they were crossing off things instead of giving us character or giving us plot. This was to me fun, but
I can see that. I can see that. I would. My big issue with the episode, and this is probably going to be slightly controversial, is that. Yeah, I know Darren has a hot take. That never happens. My big issue is I kind of see what Jack's getting at there with the checkbox stuff, but for me, it's not the stuff involving Jimmy Woo and Darcy. The stuff involving Jimmy Woo and Darcy is integral to what the show is doing, in that it's literally bringing in 2 sitcom stars from modern sitcoms to watch old sitcoms and riff track on it. And if that's not what WandaVision is, I have no idea what WandaVision is, and I probably have no idea what WandaVision is. The stuff that felt like a checkbox to me was the Monica Rambeau stuff at the start. The bit where she kind of gets de-blipped and she kind of goes and she works, and you get all this stuff about S.W.O.R.D. and like there's this big sequence at the start where she's basically given all this exposition about what S.W.O.R.D. does and what the purpose of S.W.O.R.D. is, and basically told, but you're not going to be doing any of that. This is not relevant to whatever you're doing at the moment. You're being benched, so you're going to like. And like in terms of just plot logistics, I don't mind plot logistics. I don't mind like, okay, well we have to come up with a contrivance to get this character there. I don't mind the absurdity of, well, apparently Jimmy Woo lost a confidential informant, but instead of going into the town himself because he had a bad feeling about it, he decided to call us for some reason because the FBI presumably calls us about these things, got us to get a drone. I'm getting you to take the drone to him, where he will be waiting with 2 local sheriffs who have apparently done nothing in the time it's taken them to call me, call you, get the drone to you to drive to New Jersey, and you to meet him there. But like that really feels like, that kind of illustrates that Rambeau really feels kind of inessential to what's going on. And I think that's... Like, I really like the opening scene. We should probably come back and talk about the opening scene, because I think that's worth talking about in itself. But for me, I love the opening scene, and we'll maybe talk about why I love the opening scene in a moment. But my big problem with the opening scene was that I like that de-blip sequence because you get a glimpse of what it must have been like as a regular person to live through the absurdity of, like, Infinity War and Endgame. The kind of panic
they haven't shown anything like that until this, right? Like, there hasn't been any other show that kind of showcases that moment.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And like, I really like that moment, but part of me is watching it thinking, you know, this is really great because it underscores how it must be to be a normal person in this world of gods and supermen. How weird must it be that your entire existence stopped for 5 years because some purple dude clicked his fingers in space that one time? And like, make sense of that, understand that. Like, what does religion look like after that? Like, how do you believe in God after that? It's like, do people worship Thanos on Earth now? How do you make sense of that? What is property prices like? What is like in terms of like leasing? How does that work? Like, if you disappeared and your house was sold, do you have a legal claim to it? What happens if your partner got divorced? What happens if your kid got blipped and they come back 5 years later exactly the same age? Like, all that stuff is terrifying and existentially like dreadful and horrifying. And I really like that because like, that's a certain part of the horror of WandaVision that Jack mentioned there, which, like Jack mentioned in the first episode, the horror of WandaVision is sitcom-esque, oh, isn't it hilarious that we're doing this stuff? And then pausing to go, but yes, if you actually experience this, it would be horrible, and it would give you nightmares, and it would drive any sane person mad. And I kind of like that the opening scene does that with standard superhero stuff. It's like, no. What happens in superhero movies is insane. If you live through it, you go nuts. Yes. But while I was watching it, I couldn't help but think, no, they're gonna make Monica Rambeau a superhero. She's gonna turn into a superhero. She's not gonna be a normal person for long because she's based on a comic book character. And I kept thinking, like, if you took Monica Rambeau out of the episode and you put Jimmy Woo in that position,
sure.
If you put Jimmy Woo in that prologue and then jumped from the prologue to Jimmy Woo losing his confidential informant, it would probably flow a lot better for me. But instead you have all this stuff with S.W.O.R.D. where it's like, look, 2 years down the line, Disney Plus are going to do a Secret Invasion miniseries. We need you to be aware that there's this organization that involves Captain Marvel, who's also connected to the Skrulls, and they're probably going to be involved in this because that's what the future of the Marvel Universe is.
Sure.
It's like that's not what I want in my WandaVision episode. Thank you very much.
So the checkboxes, if I'm understanding you correctly, the checkboxes that you're upset with are them setting up for future Marvel property licenses.
And not like in creative ways, just in like very obvious, like shoehorn in. It's like, no. Before we get to the show that you're watching, you're going to have 10 minutes of commercials for S.W.O.R.D.
I mean, they didn't do an actual commercial this episode, right? So they might as well throw the S.W.O.R.D. commercial and start.
Though, to be fair, you know, because we're in that intro scene, that entire sequence, that de-blip sequence, which was very chaotic and a wonderful insight, you know, because we've dabbled into it here and there, like in Spider-Man Far From Home. Aunt May is having that benefit for people who were displaced by the blip because of property contracts, I'm sure. But it's never been dealt with. Being part of that chaos was at least a little emotionally resonant. She's in a hospital. Her mom's going through cancer treatment. But guess what? Her mom's gone already for a different reason because she missed. And so, like, just that moment got me a little emotionally swept up in Monica Rambeau's character because, we've all been in a similar situation when you're in a hospital with a loved one. And so it's like, I thought it did a very good job of capturing that chaos and making me very invested in Monica as a character. You are correct that her character isn't necessarily necessary for the show, but I am invested in it now.
That's fair. I could see that in terms of like building blocks and brand synergy and stuff like that. It is important. Like, again, and particularly when you look at like some of the complaints people have about WandaVision is that, it's not important, or it doesn't tie in, or it doesn't feel like it's moving the Marvel universe forward. It's like, okay, fine. You guys get those 10 minutes. I can give you those.
Moving from, I guess, the very beginning of the episode to near the ending, one of the big questions that we were all asking, and they literally wrote on the board and even mentioned during the episode, was, isn't Vision dead?
Yes.
And then we kind of got a glimpse into what Wanda's version of Vision might be, which seems to be some sort of walking corpse.
Oh, baby.
I don't know.
I love, like, Disney as a family-friendly company that has just created, like, Star for anything that is 12A or above. I don't think this is the case. Like, this is not Darren's big prediction, but I would love it so much if, like, Wanda's, like, reanimation, or Wanda's sort of, like, reality warping powers hadn't, like, fathomed Vision out of her memory or imagination or projected onto the world, but had literally just resurrected his corpse and was operating it like some sort of synthetic meat puppet. I would love if that was the case.
Which might be true. Like, his body is made out of vibranium. It cannot decompose. She might have just gotten his body.
And this is like when Skrulls bleed green, so like technically it doesn't like break any broadcast standards or practices. Like, you don't have to worry about kids worrying about like zombies or necromancy because he's not really.
He's a machine.
He's a robot. He's a robot.
So I mean, here's my question: Where did the event take place when his head was broken? Was that in Wakanda or was that still somewhere in America? That was in Wakanda?
It was in Wakanda. Correct.
Okay, because I was trying to wonder, like, why would she have then ended up in this random Westview, New Jersey town?
Yeah.
It was in Wakanda. She was snapped away, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
She was.
So that was in Wakanda. She was snapped away. When she got unsnapped, then she would get snapped. Then she got snapped back to Wakanda and then teleported to the final battle.
With Black Panther and all that.
Right. Yeah. And so we can only assume that...
they're in upstate New York, isn't it, as well? So maybe she buried Vision near upstate New York.
Yeah, like she got a hold of his body.
Yeah.
Oh, so
I don't imagine like the Wakandans just left Vision's body lying there for 5 years. I kind of love that.
No. I guess what I'm trying to do is the math now, where it's they said that Monica had been unsnapped for 2 weeks, and so so WandaVision takes place 2 weeks after the battle to
at the
kill
new
Thanos.
Avengers headquarters. Yeah.
Yes.
Or at the very least, they start watching it when we, the audience, start watching it. So, like, who knows how long the show had been technically going on before they actually tuned into it and started watching.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, the event, whatever event that Wanda did happened approximately
the disappearance of, say, Jimmy's confidential informant. Yes. And we'll come back to that because that feels like a big Easter egg or a big setup waiting to happen. Right. We'll come back to that in a moment. But yeah.
So like Wanda, takes place in the final battle and then like has to deal with her own emotional state. Cap is gone at this point. Tony Stark is gone at this point. And she's kind of left alone. Like, if you think about it, like her family, the Avengers, is mostly dead.
Not even her family. The guys who organized her into a paramilitary unit weaponized her and then fought a civil war as a result of her actions in, like, Lagos.
That's the family that she chose. That's her family.
I feel like the Vin Dieselification of media has reached a little bit too far when, like, my paramilitary buddies are my family.
That's it. That's what we got. That's what we got here. I guess like it's funny thinking about that, like thinking about Captain America, who at the end of Endgame, decided to just, I'm gonna live my own life, literally abandoning everyone around him.
I love Chris Evans, and but my big takeaway from the Marvel Cinematic Universe is like Captain America is the most selfish jerk in the face of the planet. And I mean, he's been through a lot. Admittedly, he's been through a lot. He's done a lot. He's done a lot of really good stuff, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like Civil War happens because his bestie gets into a bit of trouble, and Cap doesn't want to follow the rules. And then at the end of Endgame, it's like, well, I buried my other bestie. He's dead now. Sure, Earth is going to need Earth's mightiest heroes right now. It's probably really vulnerable to attack. People are probably looking for spiritual or moral leadership, which is kind of my entire function as a superhero. But you know what? I'm not even going to decide that I'm going to time travel later. I'm going to do it just on the spur of the moment, on a whim. And I'm only going to tell people that I've decided to do it afterwards, when it's too late for any of them to talk me out of it, or to suggest, hey, Cap, maybe Wanda could use a talking to, don't you think? It's your problem, Sam.
Let's be fair to Captain America here. He has quite literally saved the entire planet at this point 4 times?
I mean, he participated in the
he had help.
Yeah, I mean, again, the same logic goes to Thor and Hulk, and they don't get a magic reset button.
The man deserves a retirement. Okay, let the man. He's done his duty. I think it's a real shame that he literally abandoned all of his friends. But
yeah. I mean, again, I'm not saying that, there's an employment tribunal case waiting to happen where they're no, you violated your contract. Right. I'm just saying, the particulars of the moment that he's in, and the particulars of the choice that he makes, and the fact that he doesn't consult with anybody before he does it. He barely finishes the one thing he promised to do in the moment before he just decides to do it anyway. I feel like it's fair to go, yeah, but Cap, remember Wanda, the international terrorist that you took under your wing and who got embroiled in this big international scandal that set the superhero community against each other, who watched her boyfriend get his skull crushed by a giant purple monster.
Wait.
Maybe you could just talk to her. Maybe just have a conversation. Maybe just sit down with her, check with how she's doing.
Could that be why he comes back to the MCU? Could we get old man Chris Evans, him in the old man digital makeup for Wanda, because we presume Wanda's going to be in later movies, he's going to have that moment where he's oh, I'm a bad, Daddy Cap is the bad parent. And that's why he's coming back. So Wanda can be you really fucked me up. And he's I didn't mean to, sorry.
Oops, my bad.
Right? Wouldn't that be fun? That'd be really fun theming.
And then the Cap picks up his newspaper, heads back indoors, and continues about his day as if nothing's happened.
Thanks, Boomer.
That would be so on brand,
wouldn't it be?
Just the symbolism of Captain America being an actual boomer. Yeah. Who basically just screwed everybody else over, all his kids,
who
all
screwed everyone over because of his own selfish deeds. That would be so in the moment. And
also pitching himself as the greatest generation and insisting that the kids sort out all of their own problems on their own terms.
I mean, this is tracking so well right now because we were all saying Wanda appears to be the bad guy. Everyone's blaming maybe Wanda is just the scapegoat, and I honestly I do feel that's where this is going because it's everything seems so dead on. They want you to know Wanda is the bad guy, and there are 5 episodes left.
And after Game of Thrones and after the whole Daenerys gate, I cannot see Disney, which is a company that is particularly sensitive to social media backlash, going with another powerful woman has a mental breakdown and destroys the world, and the Twitter storm that causes. Again, it's metatext, but part of me is there's no way Disney's yeah, crazy. Our women are crazy. Am I right? Am I right?
No fury like a woman scorned.
Yeah.
If you know what women, they be emotional.
They should have 50s vision just say that. Out of context. I don't care if they've reached the 2010s by then, but I like the idea of just 50s vision being women, am I right?
All right, we are getting near time.
Sorry.
So, is there anything that we need to talk about before we try to do predictions for next week? Anything else in there in the text, in the meta text? Let's go through the episode in my brain real quick.
Jimmy Woo's source or confidential informant.
Oh yeah, you wanted to mention that.
Well, I suspect that again, you could argue it's just a contrivance or coincidence. It seems like quite a contrivance that he's a San Francisco-based FBI agent, and his witness protection person just happens to be in New Jersey.
Yes.
And he just happens to have to travel to that person, and also that person ends up embroiled in another superhero type situation, despite the fact that he is also Ant-Man's parole officer as well, or Ant-Man's supervisor. So I wonder if Jimmy Woo specializes in superhuman crimes, and it's going to turn out that the confidential informant is going to be somebody related to this in some sort of tangential way. I don't know whether it'll be Agnes, although Agnes may just be Wanda's subconscious at this point, is kind of what I'm speculating. But I do wonder if there's going to be some sort of revelation that there is somebody else superhero based in Westview, and that's his...
Agnes did not show up on their chart when they were trying to
weirdly
link
enough
cast members to actual town residents. Agnes did not show up. I mean, a few people didn't show up, but Agnes specifically.
Yeah,
I think that is telling that they didn't put because she's featured more than like most of the other characters who they were attributing to like real people, right?
Yeah.
So my assumption is either she is made up like Darren posits, or she is the confidential informant, which is why they wouldn't have information. Well, no, because then Jimmy would have recognized her then, right?
But Jimmy probably wouldn't share that with kind of like in the task force, because everybody's on the task force. By the way, I love that they load Darcy into the van with like 3 random scientists, and it's like, you other 3 can go home. We have the one we want. She's the special guest star.
I mean, we assume they're still there at the camp somewhere, but Darcy figured it out pretty quickly.
They just stopped doing anything. Yeah.
Like, I'm from Thor.
Where's the guy with the media studies PhD?
Exactly.
Like, do any of you know superheroes personally? No? No? All right.
Because I do. That's fine. That's fine. Me and New Thor, best friends. Oh, wait, we haven't gotten to that point yet. Yeah, I think that's going to be a fun reveal, whether or not Agent Woo's source is a superhero thing, or whether or not Agnes really doesn't exist. I love the idea. We talked about this a little bit. I love the idea that Wanda is literally puppeting, like she's Weekend at Bernie Ing's Vision. Like it's his actual corpse
Vision's
there.
body.
Like Vision's corpse is there, and Wanda is just magicking
She's
it
just
a
putting
face.
stuff on it.
Whatever star rating I give WandaVision at the end, that revelation would give it an extra star. I don't care if I thought it was perfect anyway. It would get 6 stars if that turned out to be the case.
And so then, I guess, what I'm trying to figure out is whether or not Agnes could be a manifestation of her subconscious, or if Agnes is a superhero that's reskinned and just in on it because maybe she's a villain of some kind, right? Yeah. I think based off of the rules that we know so far, magic rules, so none of it matters, I'm going to assume that Agnes is a real person, not a manifestation. Because all rules have told us that everything in the town has a solid analog outside of the bubble.
It's been turned into
Something,
this version of it.
So I my official guess is Agnes is the informant, and she is super in some manner.
And possibly manipulating it and serving as the get out of jail free clause for Wanda. Because I do not, as KC pointed out, I do not think Wanda is going to be held accountable for everything that happens here. There is going to be some sort of, no, we're not doing Game of Thrones Season 8 again, just so you're clear.
Yeah, because as much as everything is pointing at Wanda being the problem, like it seems too on the nose to me, and I could be giving them more credit.
We're only 4 episodes in as well.
Yeah, because we're only 4 episodes. So I'm like, if that really is like the big turning point, like, okay, the next 5 episodes are what? We're all just fighting Wanda for 5 episodes straight? Like, there has to be some other revelation, I would assume.
Yeah. That's all I can add to it. So just cut out me saying yeah.
I like Jack saying yeah. Leave Jack saying yeah in, please.
Dang it! Now we have to leave this whole thing in.
Yeah. Said the vicar to the actress. Anyway.
Right. Said the sailor to the lady. Okay, so next week, depending on formula, we can either stay outside the bubble and get a little more information out there from Monica, or we can go back in the bubble, which means whenever we go back in the bubble, it's going to be the 80s. We know that'll remain true because that's the formula that we know so far. If it's 80s, we can only assume that it is the Halloween episode because that seemed to be have 80s flavor to it.
Yeah.
This is based purely off of the visuals that have been given to us.
Yeah.
Yep.
So...
And the 90s seems to, from the trailer, have a kind of a Clarissa Explains It All thing where she talks to the camera. Or possibly Modern Families, that's maybe the 2000s one. But there is a sequence where Wanda talks directly to the camera. So that means it's not the Halloween one, I would suspect. So
sure, yeah. Halloween one definitely has almost like a Wonder
Retro.
Years Roseanne vibe to it. Even though I think both of those might have been 90s.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure those were 90s shows. Because I watched them while they were airing, and I'm not that old.
I am old, that's why I forget everything.
Darren turns to his whiteboard and writes, "How old is KC?"
We'll piece this together eventually. Okay, so yeah, I'm assuming next episode's going to be Halloween, which we know via the trailers. In that episode, Vision becomes slightly more self-aware. So we might actually move the story forward for the first time in 3 weeks, which I would be very excited about. My final thoughts is back on that, like understanding the medium that you are releasing your content in. If this were a binge show, if I watched all of these 4 episodes back to back to back, I would be perfectly happy because that's like an evening. Like that's couple hours and everything's fine, but because I have to wait every week and then think about it every week, it's far too slow for me, keeping in mind that I have ADHD. So I might
I 100% agree with you.
I agree.
Like, I feel the
with
exact
KC.
same way.
I agree with Casey's observation earlier that like we are the very obsessive people. Like part of me wonders if my parents are watching it and what they're making, and they think that this is all just moving too fast. They probably could have slowed down a bit. I think they gave away too much too early. I was still trying to figure out what was going on, but I do think that yes, we are highly literate readers, and I think to be fair, the show assumes that we are because again, as we mentioned, the entire text of this episode. But I do wonder if, like, I wonder how regular, like, non-Twitter, non-YouTube comment audiences are reading this. Like, are they on board with it? Because I know my brother, wait, I shouldn't say this on a podcast. I know my brother has gotten access to a Disney Plus account recently. And because he's watching it. So that's how I'm going to phrase that to avoid implicating my brother in anything, or myself apparently. But yes, I know that like people outside of like the Twitter sphere and outside of like YouTube are watching it. I kind of wonder what they're making of it.
Because I rewatched, I watched it this morning so we could talk about it, and then usually I'll end up rewatching it with my wife later. And while my wife is an avid comics reader, on and off, she doesn't know everything. She does not look through the IMDb like I do. And so I always have that conversation with her. Oh, what did you think about this? And then like I'll always want to talk more about it, but I'm very cognitive of her. And so I said, oh, actually, there's something we could talk about, but it might be spoilery because I know the casting information. Do you want to know that? And she goes, no, I don't want to know that. And so I believe at the end of the story, for someone who is not reading the IMDb information, who is not obsessively watching the trailers, who doesn't know as much of the comics as we do, I believe that it's a perfectly adequate show that is interesting and fun to watch. It's just not for me right now.
I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like this episode confirmed everything that we thought was going on. That's fine and great. But just like Jack is saying, like now the story can start because all of this was kind of just set up, and then they explained the setup, and then now they can start telling the story.
Yeah.
I feel really bad that I'm on the extreme opposite of Jack. I like that we have the full spectrum of opinions here, but I kind of love that. Like, I'm like, no. I'm actually dreading the other shoe dropping. I'm like, I really don't want this to turn into like generic explain everything superhero stuff. I don't want people to start throwing each other through walls and floors. I want to just enjoy the kind of ambience, the mood of it, the kind of the celebration of the MCU is on television, and television is not yet a medium that we have to like subjugate and beat and bend and contort so that we dominate it and it looks the way that everything else looks and it looks just like every other consumable product. It's like, no, we're going to arrive on TV, we're going to tenderly reach out, we're going to caress it, we're going to celebrate it, we're going to acknowledge its limitations, its modes, its structures. I'm like,
Once you start talking about caressing TV, I know it's time to wrap up.
That's fair. Apologies, but I'm still on board. I'm kind of wary of the point at where it turns into Endgame or Infinity War. So I'm enjoying it at the moment.
No, I think that's absolutely fair. And that will be it for this week. We made some predictions for next week, but they didn't give us enough information to do a full good job of it. Dang it. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening to this. Once again, I've been Jack Packard.
I've been Darren Mooney.
And I've been Casey Wosu.
And we will see you next week. To be continued.